from Fortune 100s, Fortune 50s, all the way down to startups and middle market. My expertise was in strategy and governance, cybersecurity strategy and governance, and my clients were mainly chief information security officers and CIOs, and a smattering of risk and control individuals as well, like directors of internal audit. In my last few years before mandatory retirement, I was asked to become KPMG's CISO. So I spent about 6 months as KPMG's interim CISO while we looked for a full-time CISO. And from there, in post-retirement from KPMG, I served as the CISO for Minted.com. You may know Minted as a platform for greeting cards and art that is crowdsourced. Very interesting organization. And I served for 2.5 years as the CISO for Five Below. And now I am serving as an advisor and virtual CISO for a number of other companies.
Fantastic. Hey, Glenn, what did you see as a big difference between some of your Fortune 50, Fortune 100s, and maybe some of these smaller companies from a risk perspective? I'm just curious, do you see a difference in what they require and maybe what they desire?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the bigger difference comes from privately held companies versus an SEC registrant. So once you become a public company, the Sarbanes-Oxley kicks in as well as other regulations. So while everybody is responsible for privacy of customer information, it certainly becomes much more of an issue when you're dealing with international privacy regulations. So for instance, the Singapore privacy laws, the EU privacy directives. So if you're doing business as a multinational, those requirements become much more stringent. And I didn't see that as much in the startups or the middle market companies that were primarily doing business in the United States.
Okay, so stay on that thread. So other than like a compliance or a regulatory, what are the other challenges you saw in these large companies and maybe some of the mid-sized companies?
Large companies have in many cases, a federated model, and these federated models have resulted in from perhaps acquisition, and so you have a technology sprawl that is humongous, and you're dealing with many different disparate technologies across many lines of business, and so keeping up on understanding where your data is, what your most important data is. And you'll be surprised, maybe not, to hear that even some of the largest companies in the world, from a data governance perspective, still have a hard time implementing, for instance, data classification. So I work with a number of large companies, large financial services companies, that while they had data classification policies, actually classifying and tagging data appropriately across their large technology estates still is an issue. And it's an issue today.
So when you say it's an issue, was it just the overhead or the actual manpower, person power to like go tag it? Or, I mean, how did you go decide what
Yeah.
was sensitive and not?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So there's a lot of tools that are out there in the marketplace that can help you identify the data. So you may know where the data is, you even may know what your most sensitive data is, but then tagging it and appropriately protecting it becomes somewhat of a business issue. And you'll find yourself dealing with the issues of speed to market and the ability to rapidly respond to, changing market demands, and sometimes security gets put on the back burner over that innovation and speed to market. So that's one of the issues you find. As a CISO, you're not always just battling with your own internal IT teams, but you're battling sometimes to convince your ultimate end user that additional level of security is needed and appropriate.
So your ultimate end user, like let's say KPMG style, your customer, they have kind of a speed to data, speed to innovation versus security kind of a complexity. with KPMG monitoring or working in about 143, I think is the number, 143 countries. That ballpark, that's a lot of countries. How did you see the differences across different geographies? I mean, were there some basic standards that everybody does, and maybe other countries are more sensitive?
Yeah, so I'll answer this somewhat generically, so not to give away any secrets of KPMG or the other big four, but the big four are a loose federation of countries, and each country is its own LLP. So for the instance of KPMG US, which is what I was responsible for, I did not have direct responsibility for other global countries. Having said that, we did have a global CISO, I believe we still do, who was responsible for setting those baseline standards that are then propagated across the entire KPMG network of countries. So each country has their own CISO or person responsible for security, or groups of countries in many cases, and they're responsible for their own technology estates. There are a set of global applications that are shared amongst countries, and in those cases, the security standards are again applied by the global organization. Um, I would say in many cases that's not too dissimilar than what you might see in a large multinational, whereby you may have business information security officers or BISOs that sit within lines of business that have a dotted line into a corporate CISO that's responsible for the oversight and the setting of the policy. But the responsibility for protecting data in individual businesses, take banking. If you look at a credit card business versus your brick and mortar banking business versus your trading business, each of those would have different individuals responsible for protection of those with oversight from the CISO.
Okay, that's a good way to explain it. I see the idea or the challenges that come in from a corporate going into some of the subsidiaries and working at a multinational or multiple multinationals, getting our same policies in different countries and different geographies it's always a challenge. So, okay. C-suite. So as a CISO, what were the things of the C-suite that, how did that balance of struggle go between innovation and data protection, innovation versus security? I'm sure that was a common theme.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. There's really two sets of constituents here in the public company space and even the private space. Your board, your governance and oversight of management, uh, they have a keen interest in understanding your security baseline and how well you're performing against your stated goals and metrics. In fact, I spent a lot of time in my various CISO roles presenting to and working with boards of directors to provide them with meaningful metrics and really setting a strategy so that they're well aware of what the strategy is, how we're implementing the strategy, and then measuring against it. And when I say meaningful metrics, just producing statistics for a board is not enough. They want to see trending, so they want to understand that over time, your security posture is strengthening, and your risk levels are being reduced over time. It's all well and good to tell somebody that you've had, 10,000 or 10 million incidents in any particular time period. What they want to see is risk reduction overall. So we spend a lot of time building those metrics and communicating them. Management is also certainly very interested from the CEO